The awakening. Alex's eyes fluttered open. He felt weightless, his body floating in a strange, disorienting silence. The dim red glow of emergency lights pulsed rhythmically, illuminating the small space around him. He reached out, his hand brushing against a cold, metallic surface. Where am I?" he murmured, his voice echoing faintly. The ship's AI system came to life with a monotone announcement. Critical system failure. Life support at 30%. Immediate action required. Alex's heart raced. He was on a ship, but everything seemed wrong. His memory was a foggy mess. He could recall the mission. Something about a deep space reconnaissance. But how did it end like this? As he adjusted his position, he spotted something floating nearby. A figure. At first, he thought it was another human, but the elongated limbs and pale, scaled skin told him otherwise. An alien. The creature was unconscious, its body gently tumbling in the zero-gravity environment. Its silvery, reptilian features were oddly graceful, though alien enough to make Alex's stomach churn. A million questions filled his mind, but survival was his first priority. He reached out, grabbing hold of a nearby handle to steady himself. "Hey," he called out, his voice louder this time. "Wake up." No response. The alien drifted closer, and Alex hesitated before reaching out to it. His fingers brushed against its shoulder, and its eyes snapped open. Large, dark, and unblinking. They locked onto him. Alex instinctively pulled back, bracing himself against the wall. The alien tilted its head, its expression unreadable. Then it spoke, its voice low and melodic. "Who are you?" Alex blinked. It spoke his language, or at least something that sounded like it. "I'm Alex. I'm human. And you?" The alien's gaze flickered to the flashing lights, and then back to Alex. "Like Carrie," it said simply. "What happened?" "That's what I'd like to know," Alex replied, his voice tinged with frustration. "1 second, I was fine. The next, I wake up here. With you." The ship's AI interrupted their exchange. "Warning. Oxygen levels critical. Repair life support systems immediately." Alex exchanged a glance with Likari. "Whatever happened, we're not gonna last long if we don't fix this." Likari nodded. "Agreed. Let's move." They maneuvered toward the control panel at the center of the small cabin. Alex tapped the screen, but it flickered erratically. Lines of alien text scrolled across the display, incomprehensible to him. "This your language?" he asked, gesturing to the screen. Likari nodded again. "Yes. Give me a moment." The alien's long, slender fingers danced over the controls. Alex watched, marveling at how quickly it worked. Despite his initial unease, Likari seemed focused and calm. Maybe too calm, considering the situation. "Life support systems are partially offline," Likari announced. "There's damage in the aft section of the ship. We'll need to repair it manually." "Great," Alex muttered. "And by we, I'm guessing you mean me." Likari tilted its head again, a gesture Alex was starting to recognize as amusement. "You seem capable, but I'll assist." The two of them floated through the narrow corridors, using handrails to propel themselves forward. The ship groaned around them, the sound unsettling in the otherwise silent vacuum. As they reached the aft section, Alex noticed scorch marks along the walls and signs of a small explosion. "What the hell happened here?" he murmured. Likari inspected the damage, its eyes narrowing. This was deliberate. Someone sabotaged the ship. Alex felt a chill run down his spine. "Sabotage? Why?" "I don't know," Likari replied, its voice steady. "But if we don't act quickly, it won't matter." They found the damaged life support system, a tangled mess of wires and shattered panels. Likari pulled out a small tool from its belt and handed it to Alex. "You handle the wiring. I'll monitor the systems." Alex frowned but took the tool. "Why do I get the hard job?" Because I trust you to get it done, like Harry said simply, returning to the console. Alex couldn't tell if that was a compliment or manipulation, but he didn't have time to argue. He floated closer to the system, inspecting the mess of wires. Years of training kicked in, and his hands moved almost automatically, reconnecting circuits and rerouting power. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he worked. The air felt thinner now, every breath a little harder to take. "How's it looking?" he called out. "Almost there," like Harry replied. "You're doing well." Alex rolled his eyes. "Don't patronize me." A sudden jolt shook the ship, sending both of them spinning. Alex grabbed a rail, his heart pounding. What was that? Like Harry's expression darkened. "Something external. I'm detecting a faint signal, but it's not coming from the ship." Alex swallowed hard. "You mean there's someone, or something, out there?" Before like Harry could answer, the AI's voice crackled to life again. "Warning. Unknown entity detected." Alex looked at Likari, fear and suspicion mingling in his eyes. What the hell did we wake up to? Likari didn't respond immediately. Its gaze shifted to the viewport, where faint shadows danced against the stars. "We're not alone," it finally said. The broken ship. The air was thin, but it wasn't just the lack of oxygen that made breathing difficult. It was the silence. A silence so heavy that Alex could hear his own heartbeat, a constant reminder of how precarious their situation was. Floating in the dim light of the failing ship, Alex and Likari stared at the control panel. The life support systems were patched, but barely. The oxygen was no longer dropping, but the reserves wouldn't last long. The ship was limping along like a wounded animal, and every creak of the hull was a reminder that space was ready to swallow them whole. "This ship looks like it's been through a war," Alex said, breaking the silence. He wiped sweat from his forehead and looked at Likari. "And you're telling me you don't know what caused this?" Likari's silver eyes glinted in the faint red emergency light. "I told you. I don't know. My last memory is waking up here. Same as you." Alex wasn't buying it. "You just happen to be on a human ship, in the middle of nowhere, and you're as clueless as me. Forgive me if I find it hard to believe." Likari's scaled lips curled into what Alex assumed was their version of a frown. "Believe what you want, human. Right now, survival is more important than your suspicions." Alex opened his mouth to retort, but the ship groaned loudly, cutting him off. The sound echoed through the narrow corridors, low and ominous, like a warning. "That didn't sound good," Alex muttered. "It wasn't," Likari said. It floated to the console and tapped a few buttons. The screen flickered, then stabilized, displaying a crude map of the ship. "Structural integrity is failing in several sections. If we don't secure the ship, it'll tear itself apart." Alex frowned at the display. Several parts of the ship were flashing red, indicating severe damage. One section in particular, the engineering bay, was completely blacked out. "What's in the engineering bay?" Alex asked, pointing at the dead zone. "Main power core," Likari said, "and likely the source of the sabotage." Alex raised an eyebrow. "You think whoever did this is still here?" Likari's expression was unreadable, but there was a tension in its posture that Alex didn't like. "We should check. If there's someone, or something, still aboard, we need to know." Alex wasn't thrilled about the idea, but he nodded. "Fine. But if we run into anything hostile, don't expect me to save you." Likari tilted its head in that way that was starting to get on Alex's nerves. Likewise, the corridor leading to the engineering bay was darker than the rest of the ship. The emergency lights here had burned out, leaving only the dim glow of Alex's wrist-mounted flashlight and Likari's bioluminescent patches to guide their way. The air felt colder here, and the silence was even more oppressive. Alex gripped the rail as they floated forward, his eyes darting to every shadow. "This place gives me the creeps," he muttered. "You're not alone in that," Likari said, its voice low. It held a small cylindrical device in one hand, scanning the walls and floor as they moved. The device emitted a faint hum, and Alex noticed Lycuri's grip tightening on it. "What's that?" Alex asked. "A scanner," Lycuri replied. "It detects energy signatures." "And?" Alex prompted, noticing the way Lycuri's expression darkened. "There's something here," Lycuri said. "Something. Active." Alex's pulse quickened. "Define active." Before Lycuri could answer, the ship groaned again, louder this time. A sudden jolt shook the corridor, sending Alex tumbling into the wall. He cursed, grabbing a handhold to steady himself. What the hell was that? He snapped. Lycuri was staring at its scanner, its eyes wide. "The power core. It's destabilizing." "Isn't that bad?" Alex asked. "Extremely," Lycuri said. "If we don't stabilize it, the ship will explode." Alex groaned. "Of course it will, because this day couldn't get any worse." They reached the engineering bay, but the door was sealed shut. The control panel decided was sparking, the wires exposed and damaged. "Can you open it?" Alex asked. Lycuri nodded. "I'll need a moment. Cover me." "Cover you with what?" Alex said. "I don't exactly have a weapon." Lycuri didn't respond, its focus on the panel. Alex sighed and turned his flashlight toward the corridor behind them, his nerves on edge. The ship was too quiet, and that quiet was starting to feel unnatural. "Something's not right," Alex muttered. He glanced at Lycuri. "Hurry up. I'm going as fast as I can," Lycuri said, frustration creeping into its voice. Alex opened his mouth to reply, but then he heard it, a faint sound, like a whisper, coming from somewhere behind him. He froze, his flashlight trembling slightly in his hand. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. "Hear what?" Lycuri asked, not looking up. Alex turned slowly, his flashlight sweeping the corridor. The sound came again, louder this time. It wasn't a whisper, it was a scraping noise, like metal against metal. "Something's out there," Alex said, his voice barely above a whisper. Lycuri looked up, its expression serious. "Stay calm. It might just be." The door to the engineering bay suddenly slid open with a loud hiss, cutting Lycuri off. Alex jumped, his heart pounding. "Inside now," Lycuri said, grabbing Alex's arm and pulling him through the doorway. The engineering bay was in even worse shape than the rest of the ship. The walls were blackened with soot, and the air was thick with the smell of burned circuits. The power core sat in the center of the room, a massive glowing sphere that pulsed erratically. Sparks flew from the surrounding machinery, and the floor was littered with debris. "That doesn't look stable," Alex said, eyeing the core. "It's not," Lycuri said. It floated to a nearby console, scanning the controls. "I'll need your help to reroute the power flow. If we don't stabilize the core in the next 5 minutes, this ship is done for." Alex sighed. "You really know how to motivate a guy." As they worked, the scraping sound returned, louder this time. Alex froze, his hands hovering over the controls. "It's here," he said. Lycuri didn't look up. "Keep working. I'll handle it." "How are you going to?" Before Alex could finish, the lights in the engineering bay flickered and went out, plunging the room into darkness. The scraping sound was now deafening, echoing all around them. "Lycuri," Alex called out, his voice shaking. A faint glow appeared in the darkness, Lycuri's bioluminescent patches. "Keep working, Alex. I'll deal with this." Alex swallowed hard and turned back to the console, his hands trembling. Behind him, he heard a low guttural growl, followed by Lycuri's voice, calm and steady. "Show yourself." The first clue. The darkness inside the engineering bay was suffocating, punctuated only by the erratic pulses of the ship's failing power core. Alex's hands trembled as he worked, reconnecting circuits and reactivating subsystems. Behind him, faint growls echoed, accompanied by the unnerving sound of scraping metal. He couldn't see what was causing it, but every instinct told him it wasn't friendly. "Hurry up, human," Lycary's voice cut through the oppressive silence. It was steady but sharper than before. "I'm trying." Alex snapped, his voice cracking. "This isn't exactly plug and play." Lycary, its bioluminescent patches glowing faintly, moved with a deliberate grace toward the source of the sound. In one hand, it clutched the cylindrical device it had used earlier, now glowing faintly blue. Its eyes scanned the room, unblinking. The growling intensified, and suddenly a shadow shifted in the far corner. It was subtle, but enough to make Alex's heart leap. Of Lycary. "I think we've got company." "I see it," Lycary said calmly. It raised the device, which emitted a low hum, and pointed it toward the darkness. "Stay focused. Whatever this is, it feeds on distraction." "Great," Alex muttered. "Just what I needed. An evil monster that's basically my ex." The tension in the room thickened as the growling morphed into a series of distorted guttural clicks. The sound reverberated in Alex's chest, almost like it was trying to reach inside him. His hands froze for a moment before he forced himself to keep working. Lycary stepped closer to the shadow, its every movement deliberate. The hum of its device grew louder, and the blue light brightened, illuminating the corner. For a moment, there was nothing, just empty space and twisted metal. Then the shadow moved. It wasn't one entity but many. Tendrils of darkness coiled and twisted, flickering in and out of existence like smoke caught in a breeze. The tendrils reached toward Lycary, stopping just short of touching its skin. "Fascinating," Lycary murmured, its voice low. "Fascinating." Alex hissed, glancing over his shoulder. "That thing looks like it wants to eat us." "It's not alive," Lycary replied. "At least, not in the way we understand life. It's an energy anomaly." "Well, tell the anomaly to stop growling at me," Alex retorted, reconnecting the final circuit. The power core surged with light, stabilizing slightly, though the ship still groaned under the strain. The tendrils reacted immediately, withdrawing from Lycary and coiling toward the core. They latched onto the glowing sphere, their flickering movements becoming more frantic. "They're feeding on it," Lycary exclaimed. Alex cursed under his breath. "How do we stop it?" Lycary hesitated, then raised its device. "Keep the core stable. I'll handle this." Before Alex could protest, Lycary activated the device. A high-pitched whine filled the room as a pulse of blue energy shot out, striking the tendrils. They recoiled violently, releasing the core and retreating into the shadows. The room fell silent again. But the damage was done. The power core's glow dimmed, and the ship's systems flickered dangerously. "That didn't exactly fix the problem," Alex said, sweat dripping down his face. "It bought us time," Lycary replied, "and gave us something more valuable. A clue. The discovery." With the immediate threat gone, Lycary floated toward the console near the power core, scanning the readings. Alex joined it, still wary of the shadows lurking in the corners. "What kind of clue are we talking about?" Alex asked, leaning over Lycary's shoulder. "Look here," Lycary said, pointing to the console. "This anomaly isn't random. It's following a pattern." Alex squinted at the screen. The display showed a series of jagged lines, energy signatures, he assumed, interspersed with strange symbols. The symbols were unlike anything he'd seen before, but they stirred a faint sense of recognition in the back of his mind. "What's that language?" Alex asked. Lycary frowned. "It's not a language. It's a code, a signal, and it's been embedded in your ship's systems." "You're saying this thing hijacked the ship?" Alex asked. "Not just hijacked," Lycary said. "It's been here longer than us. This signal was active before we woke up." Alex felt a chill run down his spine. "So what?" "It caused the sabotage. It's been watching us." Perhaps, like Harry said. Or perhaps it was trying to send a warning. A warning? Alex repeated, incredulous. You call that thing friendly? Not friendly, like Harry corrected. Desperate. This isn't just an attack. It's a message. And whoever sent it didn't want us to survive long enough to understand it. Alex ran a hand through his hair, frustration bubbling up. Great. So now we're decoding evil space signals. What's next? An alien death cult. Like Harry didn't respond. It was staring at the screen, its expression unreadable. Finally, it said, the signal is coming from a specific location. A module near the ship's central AI core. Alex groaned. Let me guess. That's also heavily damaged. Likely, like Harry admitted. But if we can access it, we might be able to understand what we're dealing with. Alex sighed. Fine. Let's go. But if another shadow monster shows up, I'm letting it eat you first. The central module. The journey to the AI core was uneventful, though the tension never left the air. Every shadow seemed to shift, every sound amplified in the silence. When they reached the central module, Alex was almost relieved to see it intact, though the relief was short-lived. The module's exterior was scorched, the access panel melted shut. Alex stared at it, his shoulders sagging. You're kidding me. I'll need to bypass it manually, like Harry said. Keep watch. Yeah, because I'm great at fighting space anomalies with my bare hands, Alex muttered, but he positioned himself to watch the corridor. As like Harry worked, Alex's mind raced. The pieces didn't add up. A sabotaged ship, an energy anomaly, a signal buried in the systems. It all pointed to something bigger. But what? Got it, like Harry announced, snapping Alex out of his thoughts. The panel hissed open, revealing a tangled mess of wires and circuits. At the center of the module was a small glowing device, a data core. What's that? Alex asked. The source of the signal, like Harry said. It carefully removed the device and held it up. The glow pulsed faintly, almost like a heartbeat. As Alex stared at the core, the faint symbols from before appeared again, projected into the air. This time, they were accompanied by a single chilling phrase in perfect English. Do not trust the alien. Alex's blood ran cold. He looked at Likari, who was staring at the message with equal confusion. What the hell is this? Alex whispered. Likari didn't respond immediately. When it finally spoke, its voice was quiet. I don't know, but I think we've just found the first piece of the puzzle. The unseen threat. The message hung in the air, its ominous glow casting long shadows on the walls. Do not trust the alien. Alex took an instinctive step back, his heart pounding. His eyes darted to Likari, who was still staring at the projection, its silver face unreadable. The silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. What the hell does that mean? Alex demanded, his voice rising. Likari slowly lowered the glowing data core, its grip tightening. It could mean many things, it said evenly. We don't know who sent this message, or why. Alex scoffed. Oh, come on. That thing isn't exactly subtle. It's telling me you're the problem. Likari's gaze snapped to Alex, and for the first time, there was something sharp in its expression. And yet human, I'm the one keeping us alive. Are you? Alex shot back. Because right now, all I know is that we're stuck on a broken ship, fighting shadow monsters, and you seem to know way more than you're letting on. Likari's shoulders stiffened. I've told you everything I know. Yeah, sure, Alex said, gesturing at the projection. And that message just conveniently paints you as the bad guy. Real coincidence. The tension between them was electric, the air thick with mistrust. But before either could say another word, the ship groaned violently, the walls shuddering as if under immense pressure. A low, guttural hum reverberated through the corridors, deep and primal, like the sound of something ancient waking up. What now? Alex muttered, his voice trembling. Lakari tilted its head, its bioluminescent patches flickering faintly. The anomaly. It's reacting to the core. Alex's stomach dropped. Reacting how? As if in answer, the shadows in the corners of the room began to shift, coiling and twisting like smoke caught in a vacuum. They moved with purpose, converging toward the central module where Alex and Lakari stood. "Okay, that's new," Alex said, backing away. "Tell me you've got a plan." Lakari turned to the data core in its hands, its expression unreadable. "The core is the key. It's connected to the anomaly. If we can access its full data, we might be able to understand what's happening." Alex pointed at the approaching shadows. "Yeah, well, we might not live long enough to decode it." The chase. The shadows surged forward, faster than either of them expected. Alex barely had time to react as one of the tendrils lashed out, slamming into the wall inches from his head. He grabbed the edge of a nearby console and pushed off, propelling himself toward the corridor. "Move," he shouted at Lakari. Lakari didn't hesitate, tucking the core under its arm and following Alex. The two of them shot through the narrow corridors, their movements frantic but practiced. The ship's red emergency lights flickered wildly, casting the shadows in sharp, jagged patterns that seemed to grow and stretch with each passing second. "What the hell are those things?" Alex yelled as they rounded a corner. "Energy constructs," Lakari replied, its voice steady despite the chaos. "They're not alive in the traditional sense, but they're dangerous." "Yeah, no kidding." Alex snapped, narrowly dodging another tendril that slashed through the air behind him. The corridor had split into two paths. Alex glanced over his shoulder. "Which way?" "Left," Lakari said immediately. Alex didn't have time to argue. He pushed off the wall and veered left, Lakari close behind. The shadows followed, their movements erratic but relentless. Tendrils lashed out, scraping against the walls and ceiling, leaving deep gouges in the metal. "We can't outrun them forever," Alex shouted. "We don't need to," Lakari said. "I have a plan." Alex threw a glance over his shoulder. "Care to share it?" "Not yet," Lakari replied. "Just keep moving." Alex cursed under his breath, but did as he was told. The two of them sped through the twisting corridors, the ship's groans, and the shadow's guttural hums, merging into a symphony of chaos. The trap. They finally reached an open chamber, an auxiliary control room. It was larger than the corridors, with multiple consoles lining the walls and a large observation window that revealed the star-speckled void outside. The room was eerily empty, the only sound the faint hum of the ship's damaged systems. "This is your plan?" Alex asked, panting. "We're cornered in here." Lakari floated to one of the consoles, its movements quick and precise. "Not cornered. Prepared." Alex watched as Lakari accessed the console, its fingers flying over the controls. Symbols and schematics flashed across the screen, too fast for Alex to follow. "What are you doing?" "Redirecting power to the containment field," Lakari replied. Alex frowned. "Containment field." Lakari didn't look up. This ship was designed to handle hazardous energy experiments. There's a containment system in place, one that can isolate anomalies like this. "And you didn't think to mention that earlier?" Alex asked, exasperated. "There wasn't time," Lakari said. "Now, do you want to survive, or not?" Alex opened his mouth to reply, but a sudden crash behind him made him spin around. The shadows had reached the chamber, their tendrils spreading across the walls like ink in water. "Whatever you're doing, do it faster," Alex yelled. Lakari's fingers moved faster, the screen lighting up with a series of green confirmations. Almost there. The shadows surged forward, their tendrils reaching for the console. Alex grabbed a loose pipe floating nearby and swung it at the approaching mass. The pipe passed through the shadows harmlessly, but it slowed them down for a moment. "Not helping," Alex shouted. "Done," Lakari said. A sudden hum filled the chamber, and a shimmering barrier of light appeared, encasing the shadows in a spherical field. The tendrils recoiled, their movements frantic as they slammed against the barrier, unable to escape. Alex stared in disbelief. "You actually did it." Licari turned to him, its expression calm. "I told you. Survival is my priority." The revelation. The shadows writhed within the containment field, their movements growing slower and less erratic. Licari floated to the console, accessing the data core again. The symbols returned, projected in the air, but this time they formed a coherent message. Energy anomaly contained. Source. External influence. Threat level. Critical. Alex frowned. External influence? What does that mean? "It means this anomaly didn't originate here," Licari said. "Something, or someone, sent it." "Sent it from where?" Alex asked. Before Licari could answer, a new message appeared. "Trace signal to origin. Yes/no." Licari hovered its hand over the console, hesitating. Alex noticed the tension in its movements. "What's the problem?" Alex asked. Licari looked at him, its voice unusually quiet. "Tracing the signal could reveal the truth, but it might also alert whoever sent it." Alex swallowed hard. "So we either find out what's going on or stay in the dark." "Great." The room fell silent except for the faint hum of the containment field. Finally, Alex nodded. "Do it. Trace the signal." Licari pressed the command, and the screen lit up with a series of coordinates. As the data processed, a single phrase appeared on the screen. "Prepare for arrival." Alex's blood ran cold. "Arrival? What arrival?" Licari didn't answer. It was staring at the screen, its expression unreadable. Outside the observation window, the stars began to shift, their light bending unnaturally. Something was coming. And it wasn't friendly. The hidden agenda. The observation window stretched like a silent scream, reflecting Alex's stunned expression. Outside, the stars twisted unnaturally, their light bending and warping as though reality itself were being pulled apart. A faint ripple spread across the blackness of space, growing brighter with each pulse. Alex's throat tightened. "Prepare for arrival? What the hell does that mean?" Licari's gaze remained fixed on the screen, its fingers clenching the console's edge. "It means we're no longer alone. Something, or someone, is coming." "Yeah, I got that part," Alex snapped. "But who? And why is this happening now?" Licari turned to face him, its silver eyes narrowed. "The signal we traced. It acted as a beacon. Whatever sent it knows we've intercepted their message. They're responding." Alex's stomach churned. "So let me get this straight. You activated the space equivalent of a flare gun, and now some cosmic horror is on its way to kill us." Licari's expression was unreadable, but its voice was calm. "I told you the risk." "Risk?" Alex threw his hands up. "You didn't mention summoning God knows what from the void as part of the risk." The ship shuddered violently, cutting their argument short. The containment field holding the shadow anomaly flickered, and the tendrils writhed faster, reacting to the approaching presence. The guttural hum returned, louder and more menacing, echoing through the ship like a warning. "We don't have time for this," Licari said. It grabbed the glowing data core from the console and tucked it into a compartment on its suit. "Follow me." Alex hesitated, his mind racing. Every instinct told him to stay put, to let Licari handle whatever this mess was. But the shadows pressing against the containment field were a stark reminder that staying still wasn't an option. "Fine," Alex muttered. "But if this gets me killed, I'm haunting you." The secret chamber. Licari led Alex through the twisting corridors, their movements hurried but precise. The ship groaned and creaked under unseen pressure, as if space itself were clawing at its hull. The emergency lights flickered, casting long, jagged shadows that seemed to reach for them as they passed. "Where are we going?" Alex asked, struggling to keep up. "To the ship's restricted zone. Likuri replied. Alex frowned. Restricted? Why? Likuri didn't answer immediately, its focus on the path ahead. Finally, it said, because it holds something that wasn't meant to be found. That's not ominous at all, Alex muttered. They reached a section of the ship Alex hadn't seen before. The corridor ended in a large reinforced door, its surface etched with strange symbols that glowed faintly. Alex felt a chill run down his spine as he stared at the markings. What is this? He asked. An archive, Likuri said, stepping up to the door. It placed its hand on a scanner embedded in the wall, and the symbols on the door pulsed in response. This ship wasn't just a research vessel. It was carrying classified information about the anomaly. Alex's jaw dropped. Wait, what? You're telling me this ship knew about the shadow thing the whole time? Likuri nodded. It was designed to study it, to weaponize it. Of course it was, Alex muttered. Because humans can't resist poking things they don't understand. The door hissed open, revealing a chamber bathed in an eerie blue light. The walls were lined with shelves, each holding strange devices and glowing data cores. In the center of the room stood a cylindrical pedestal, its surface covered in the same glowing symbols as the door. Likuri approached the pedestal and inserted the data core into a slot at its top. The symbols on the pedestal shifted and rearranged, forming a holographic display that filled the room with flickering light. Alex stepped closer, his eyes widening as he took in the projection. It showed a massive, shadowy structure floating in the void, a station or a ship, its surface writhing with the same tendrils that had attacked them. What is that? Alex whispered. The source, Likuri said. That structure is generating the anomaly. It's ancient, older than any civilization we know. And it's alive. Alex felt the blood drain from his face. Alive? You mean it's sentient. Sentient and hostile, Likuri said. It feeds on energy, consuming everything in its path. This ship was sent to find it, to study it, and to stop it. How's that working out for us? Alex asked dryly. Likuri ignored him, its focus on the hologram. There's more. It gestured to a series of symbols that appeared around the structure. These markings, their coordinates. The signal we traced wasn't just a warning. It was a map. A map to what? Alex asked. To its core, Likuri said. The heart of the anomaly. The choice. Before Alex could respond, the ship shuddered again, harder this time. The guttural hum was now a deafening roar, and the shadows pressing against the containment field grew more frantic. The observation window behind them glowed with a blinding light as the warped stars outside twisted into a singularity. It's here, Likuri said, its voice low. Alex turned to the window, his chest tightening. A massive shadow loomed in the distance, its tendrils spreading across the void like cracks in glass. The structure from the hologram had arrived, and it was far larger and far more terrifying than he had imagined. What do we do? Alex asked, his voice shaking. Likuri looked at him, its expression unreadable. We have two options. We can try to escape, though I doubt we'll get far, or we can follow the map, go to the core, and end this. Alex stared at Likuri in disbelief. You're talking about going straight into that thing. You realize how insane that sounds, right? It's the only way, Likuri said. If we run, it will follow. It won't stop until it consumes everything. Alex's mind raced. He wanted to run, to get as far away from this nightmare as possible. But he knew Likuri was right. The anomaly wouldn't stop. It would chase them, destroy them, and move on to its next target. Fine, Alex said, his voice grim. Let's do it. But if we die, I'm blaming you. Likuri nodded. Agreed. The journey begins. As the ship buckled under the strain of the anomaly's presence, Alex and Likuri prepared for their desperate mission. The holographic map glowed brightly, its symbols leading them into the heart of the shadowy structure. a place no one had ever returned from. Outside, the anomaly's tendrils coiled around the ship, their movements slow and deliberate, as if savoring the moment. Inside, Alex and Likari braced themselves, their fate uncertain but their resolve unshaken. The only way out was through, and the endgame was just beginning. The enemy revealed. The ship groaned under the immense pressure as the anomaly's tendrils wrapped around it, their shadowy forms pulsating with unnatural energy. The once distant hum had transformed into a deep, resonant vibration that seemed to come from every direction, drilling into Alex's skull. He gritted his teeth and held on to the console as the ship lurched violently. "We're not going to survive this," Alex shouted, his voice barely audible over the cacophony of alarms and creaking metal. Likari, perched steadily at the central console, didn't flinch. Its silver eyes were locked on the glowing holographic map, its hands moving rapidly over the controls. "We will if you follow my instructions. Get to the auxiliary navigation terminal. Now." Alex hesitated for only a moment before pushing off the wall and floating toward the terminal. The ship's gravity was long gone, and the red emergency lights cast eerie shadows across the room. The tendrils outside the observation window seemed almost alive, slithering and probing as if testing the ship's defenses. He reached the terminal and strapped himself into the seat. "What am I doing here?" "Redirecting power to the engines," Likari said without looking up. "We need to move before the ship is fully consumed." "Move where?" Alex demanded, his fingers dancing over the controls. "Toward that thing." "Yes," Likari replied, its tone unyielding. "The map is guiding us to the core. If we're going to stop the anomaly, that's where we need to go." Alex let out a humorless laugh. "Fantastic. Straight into the belly of the beast." The descent. The engines roared to life, pushing the ship forward. Outside, the shadowy structure loomed closer, its size dwarfing anything Alex had ever seen. The tendrils pulsed and shifted, reacting to their movement. Some withdrew, but others lashed out, striking the hull with enough force to rattle the entire ship. "Shields are down to 12%. Alex called out, his eyes scanning the terminal. "We're not going to last long at this rate." "We don't need long," Likari said, its hands flying over the controls. "Just hold the course." The ship pierced through the outer layers of the structure, and the darkness outside gave way to an eerie, pulsating interior. The walls of the anomaly were alive, shifting and writhing, as though the entire structure were a living organism. Glowing veins of energy pulsed through the walls, casting an unnatural light that illuminated their path. This is insane," Alex muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. He couldn't tear his eyes away from the view outside. "It's like we're inside a giant alien heart." "In a way we are," Likari said. "The core is its source of power. If we can reach it, we might be able to overload it." "Might," Alex repeated, not exactly comforting. Likari glanced at him, its expression unreadable. "This isn't about comfort, human. It's about survival." The revelation. As they delved deeper into the structure, the ship's sensors began to pick up strange readings. The air inside the anomaly, if it could even be called air, was saturated with energy signatures that defied explanation. The ship's systems struggled to process the data, spitting out fragmented readings that made no sense. But it wasn't the sensors that caught Alex's attention. It was the voices. Faint and distant at first, the whispers grew louder as they descended. They weren't human, but they weren't entirely alien either. They were distorted, overlapping, and incomprehensible, yet they carried an undeniable sense of urgency. "Do you hear that?" Alex asked, his voice shaking. Likari nodded. "The anomaly is trying to communicate." "Communicate," Alex repeated. "It's whispering like a haunted house." "That's not communication. It's creepy." "It's more than that," Likari said. "This structure isn't just alive. It's conscious, and it knows we're here." Alex's blood ran cold. "What does it want?" Likari hesitated, its gaze fixed on the glowing veins outside. To assimilate, to consume. Everything it touches becomes part of it. Great, Alex muttered. So we're on a suicide mission inside a sentient black hole. Just what I always wanted. The core. The ship finally arrived at the heart of the structure. The core was massive, a pulsating sphere of pure energy that dominated the chamber. Tendrils extended from it, connecting to every part of the structure, feeding it with raw power. The light it emitted was blinding, casting sharp, flickering shadows across the walls. Alex shielded his eyes and stared in awe. That's it. That's the core. Lycari nodded. Yes, and if we destroy it, the anomaly will collapse. Destroy it? How? Alex asked. That thing looks like it could survive a supernova. Lycari held up the glowing data core. This contains the ship's experimental weapon, an energy disruptor. If we can integrate it into the core, it will destabilize the anomaly's energy flow and trigger a chain reaction. And by chain reaction, you mean giant explosion, right? Alex said. Yes, Lycari said simply. Alex sighed. Of course, because nothing's ever easy. The enemy revealed. As Lycari began the process of integrating the data core into the anomaly's core, the whispers around them grew louder. They weren't just voices anymore. They were images, memories, emotions. Alex saw flashes of alien worlds, civilizations consumed by the anomaly, their histories erased in an instant. He stumbled back, clutching his head. What? What is this? The anomaly's consciousness, Lycari said. It's trying to resist, to confuse us. But it wasn't just confusion. Among the memories, Alex saw something else. Images of humans working alongside aliens, building the ship they were now on. He saw Lycari among them, its face calm and determined. You were part of this, Alex said, his voice trembling. You knew about the anomaly all along. Lycari didn't look at him. I was sent to ensure the mission's success. That's all you need to know. Alex felt a surge of anger. You lied to me. This wasn't an accident. You brought me here for this. I brought you here because I needed your help, Lycari said, turning to face him. The anomaly can only be stopped from within. I couldn't do it alone. Before Alex could respond, the core pulsed violently, and a deep, resonant voice filled the chamber. You will not succeed. The tendrils around the core lashed out, slamming into the ship with terrifying force. The walls began to close in, and the light from the core grew blinding. Lycari turned to Alex, its voice urgent. The disruptor is ready. I just need a few more seconds. We don't have seconds, Alex shouted, grabbing the edge of the console as the ship shuddered violently. The voice echoed again, louder this time. You are mine. Alex stared at the core, his heart racing. This wasn't just an enemy, it was a predator. And it was ready to consume them both. The final stand. The voice of the anomaly thundered through the chamber, reverberating in Alex's chest like a drumbeat. Its words, "You are mine," weren't just sounds. They carried weight, a pressure that threatened to crush his mind. The core pulsed violently, flooding the space with blinding light, while the ship groaned as if pleading for relief. Lycari, whatever you're doing, do it now. Alex shouted over the chaos, his grip tightening on the edge of the console. Lycari, standing near the ship's central interface, worked with inhuman precision. Its silver eyes darted between the data core and the controls, its hands moving faster than Alex thought possible. The disruptor is charging, it said, its voice calm despite the storm around them. But I need time to synchronize it with the anomaly's energy signature. Time, Alex yelled. We're out of time. That thing's about to tear us apart. The ship shuddered again as a massive tendril of shadow slammed into the hull, sending Alex tumbling. He grabbed a nearby handhold and pulled himself upright, his eyes darting to the observation window. The tendrils were no longer probing. They were attacking, wrapping around the ship like a predator constricting its prey. I've got an idea, Alex called out, his voice tinged with desperation. What if we overload the ship's reactor? Detonate it right here. Likari didn't look up. That would destroy the ship and us along with it. Yeah, but it would take this thing out too, right? Alex said. Unlikely, Likari replied. The anomaly's core is too stable. A reactor explosion would only feed its energy. Alex cursed under his breath. Of course it would, because nothing about this is easy. The core awakens. The core in the center of the anomaly flared again, and the deep, resonant voice returned, louder and more commanding. You cannot escape. You cannot resist. You will become part of me. As the voice echoed, Alex felt something tugging at his thoughts, like invisible hands reaching into his mind. He shook his head violently, trying to push it away. Likari, it's in my head. I can feel it. Likari glanced at him, its expression grim. It's trying to assimilate you. Focus on me, Alex. Don't let it take control. Easy for you to say. Alex snapped, gripping his head. The whispers returned, louder now, overlapping and chaotic. Images flooded his mind, worlds consumed, people reduced to shadows, their screams silenced as they became part of the anomaly. Through the chaos, one image stood out, Likari standing before the core, its hands outstretched in surrender. Alex's eyes widened. You knew this would happen, he said, his voice trembling. You knew we wouldn't make it out alive. Likari didn't deny it. This mission was never about survival. It was about stopping the anomaly at any cost. Any cost, Alex repeated, his anger flaring. You used me. I needed you, Likari said, meeting his gaze. Your human ingenuity, your resilience. Those were our only chance. And they still are. Before Alex could respond, the core flared again, and the ship buckled violently. Sparks flew from the consoles, and the lights dimmed. The anomaly's tendrils pierced the walls, coiling toward them like hungry snakes. The final choice. Likari turned back to the controls, its movements urgent. The disruptor is ready, but someone needs to activate it manually. Alex froze. What do you mean, manually? Likari's voice was steady, but there was a hint of something beneath it. Regret. The disruptor requires a direct interface with the core. Someone has to go into the anomaly and place the device at its center. Alex stared at Likari, his mind racing. And by someone, you mean me, right? Likari shook its head. No, this is my responsibility. Alex blinked. What? I was part of the team that created this weapon, Likari said. I helped design the systems that led to this mission, and I was the one who failed to stop the anomaly before it reached this point. If anyone is going to finish this, it's me. Alex was silent for a moment, the weight of Likari's words sinking in. Finally, he said, You're serious. You're just going to sacrifice yourself. Yes, Likari said simply, because it's the only way. Alex's chest tightened. He wanted to argue, to tell Likari there had to be another way. But deep down, he knew it was right. He had seen the anomaly's power, felt its pull. This wasn't a battle they could win through force alone. Fine, Alex said, his voice rough. But you better not screw this up. Likari gave him a small nod, its silver eyes softening. Thank you, Alex, for everything. The last stand. Likari took the disruptor and floated toward the observation window. The tendrils recoiled slightly, as if sensing the device's power. Alex watched from the console, his heart pounding as Likari opened the airlock and stepped into the void. Through the window, Alex saw Likari moving toward the core, its bioluminescent patches glowing faintly in the darkness. The tendrils lashed out, but Likari dodged them with precision, its movements almost graceful. Come on, Alex muttered, his hands clenched into fists. You can do this. Lakari reached the core and placed the disruptor against its surface. The device flared with light, and the anomaly's voice roared, its tone shifting from confident to desperate. "No, you cannot. I will not be undone." The core pulsed violently, its light growing brighter and brighter. The tendrils writhed in agony, their movements frantic as they tried to stop Lakari. But it was too late. The disruptor activated, and a blinding wave of energy erupted from the core. The anomaly screamed, a sound that shook the ship to its very foundation. Alex shielded his eyes as the light engulfed everything, the sound of the anomaly's destruction echoing in his ears. The aftermath. When the light finally faded, Alex opened his eyes. The ship was still, the shadows gone. Outside the observation window, the anomaly had disappeared, leaving only the endless expanse of stars. "Lakari," Alex called out, his voice shaking. "Lakari, are you there?" There was no response. Alex slumped against the console, his chest heaving. He wanted to feel relief, but all he felt was emptiness. Lakari was gone, and so was the anomaly. The mission was over, but the cost was immeasurable. As he stared out at the stars, a faint, distorted voice crackled through the ship's comm system. "Alex, the mission succeeded. Thank you." Alex closed his eyes, a single tear rolling down his cheek. "Thank you, Lakari, for everything." And with that, he set a course for home, carrying with him the weight of what they had sacrificed, and the knowledge that for once, humanity had fought back against the darkness and won.